Hey, Marianne DeNovellis here with the Six Figure Mastermind, and I'm standing in the very room where my speaking career began. You know, a lot of these ideas that people put forth, they're great wisdom, but the way I did it was a little bit unconventional. So if you want to learn how to become a public speaker in the motivational space, you might want to hear some of the tips and tricks I use, so stay tuned. So we're down here at the Utah Valley Convention Center, and I gotta tell you, this is giving me some flashbacks right now. So I want to share with you the secrets to becoming a motivational speaker and what I did. And the reason we're here at the Utah Valley Convention Center is because several years ago, I was in one of these classrooms, and I can remember sitting there, you know, with my arms folded across my chest as the speaker was presenting on how to speak and what to do. And I remember sitting there and thinking, you know, there's a lot of great information coming my way, but if I only pay attention to the speaker, I'm going to be missing out on 80% of the content. Now, what sense does that make, right? You're missing out on 80% of the content if I'm only listening to the speaker. You think it'd be the other way around. But it's not about distraction. It's about becoming an intern of the classroom. And I decided as I was sitting there in that classroom that I wanted a piece of everything that was going on. I watched the speaker on stage. I watched where they put the easel. I watched when they presented. I watched where they were standing on the stage. I watched when they went into the audience. I watched at what part of the stories all of this was taking place. I even went over to the back table and I was watching what the AV team was doing. I was watching what the helpers were doing when they were passing out papers. I was watching what the facilitators doing, especially when they weren't on stage. And I decided right there in that moment that if I wanted to make a name for myself in anything, I had to become a recognized face in the industry. So I made an effort to come to every single seminar I could think of. I also became a credible groupie, and you probably know what it means to become a groupie. And in the seminar world, there's lots of them. But when I decided to become a credible groupie, here's what that means. It means I was going to go and be a student, not just a student, but an intern in every single seminar I was a part of. And there's a difference between being a student and being an intern of the program. The student will come in, they'll take studious notes, they'll listen to the presenter, and they'll walk away, put their notes in their desk at home, and never pay attention to them again. That's what the student does. Because students, we're trained in this school system in the United States to be excellent test takers, right? We're trained to do those mad minutes in elementary school. We're trained to take those bubble sheet tests in college and in high school, and we're trained to write essays. But how many of you know that when you are finished with that test, that information is as good as gone? You know, that happens a lot of the time, more time than we would like to think. But if you're an intern of the program, if you're an intern of the classroom, then you've got eyes and ears on everything that's going on around you. You're watching the AV table, you're watching the facilitator off stage, you're watching the helpers in the room, you're watching how the chairs are set up, you're watching what color markers they use, you're watching where they're standing on stage, when and why, and everything is just getting this sensory input inside. So I decided right there in that event that I wanted to become this recognized face, this credible groupie, by meaning that I'm going to go into every event, I'm going to ask to help at the event if I can, I'm going to ask to help pass out papers, I'm going to ask to help get the people the fulfillment materials that they need, I'm going to ask to pass out booklets, I'm going to arrive early so I can figure out what the dynamic is being created in the room, what music they're playing, and I'm going to write down a playlist of everything that they're doing, and I'm going to ask to be a part of it as much as possible. You bet I was volunteering at events. You bet I was volunteering at the back of the room because I wanted to soak up as much as humanly possible. So why am I telling you this about being an intern in the classroom? Why am I standing here in the Utah Valley Convention Center where I went to my very first seminar? Well, I'll tell you what happened. I watched the presenter as they left the room and I wondered what they were doing, so I caught up and I followed them out there. And they were looking for presenters for their next event, right? And they were looking for people who could speak and who could share their story. And as I followed them out there, I took the opportunity, I went for it. And as I experienced that, I went into classroom after that experience, following this mentor around and just sticking right by their side because I love the mission and I love the message. Fast forward 6 months from when I snuck out of the back of that classroom, I was teaching the public speaking program that classroom was designed to bring people into. Now I speak on hundreds of stages all over the world. In fact, we're going to be going to Cambodia just at the end of the week, this week, to speak internationally. I've been so honored and so privileged to share the stage with amazing voices, with hugely motivational people. I've met people like Kevin Harrington, and I've met people like Dan Clark. I've shared the stage with these brilliant, amazing minds only to share a story, to share a message. And now I get to live this incredible lifestyle where I get to just share what I love and do what I love and share the broken and vulnerable parts, and not only how they're broken and vulnerable, but how they've been healed. And now I actually get to teach others how to do the exact same thing. I have to tell you, there's nothing quite like getting someone on stage for the first time. All the nerves are coming up and all the jitters are there. But then breaking all that away and extracting the amazing message that comes out of each individual human being, that is a huge passion of mine. So that's the first secret to becoming a motivational speaker, is to become an intern of the classroom. Know all of the moving parts, know all of the moving pieces, so when it comes time for you to present, you've already got a stockpile of information you're going into your event with. When you're an intern of the program and you're becoming a motivational speaker, one of my secrets is to look for opportunities. Look for opportunities for everything. That goes back to volunteering. It goes back to being a groupie. It goes back to serving the people in the audience. You know, I'll never forget, I was at a department store and I saw this stack of blue jeans that was totally messy, totally all over the place. And I thought, this is a mess. I can't even shop. I need to put these back together. And I put them back together, and someone came, no less than 3 people came up and asked me if I worked there. Okay, this same principle applies in the classroom. So if you're wanting to become a motivational speaker, you have to be willing to be a participant first and be a helper. Be as helpful as possible. Provide answers as often as possible, especially when you're in groups or in team projects. Step out, be a leader in that moment, and offer advice and counsel with permission to those people that are seeking it. That's how you build your credibility as you seek for opportunities to serve. One of the most important keys to becoming a motivational speaker is to allow your mess to become your message. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and this person is a really big YouTuber in this space right now, and I was asking him, you know, what do you like, what do you not like, what's going on in your world? And he said, really, I would love to get into the motivational speaking department. I just don't know how to do it. And I turned to him and I said, you know, what's the biggest mess? What's the biggest obstacle that you overcome? And as he shared that with me, I was super humbled and super impressed, because it has nothing to do with his YouTube career at all. This is a personal triumph that he had after a personal tragedy. That's what we say when your mess becomes your message, which leads me into my final secret of the motivational speaking circuit. You have to allow yourself to become vulnerable. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people on stage, either in a church setting or in a public meeting setting or even on the phone, and they'll start to feel emotions come up as they tell their story. And you know what the first thing they do is? You know this. People start to feel that emotion and then they apologize. And I'm sitting there in the back of the room like, this is nuts. Why are we apologizing for having these emotions? Why are we apologizing for the tears that run down our face? Why are we apologizing for feeling these things? It's just crumbling the connection that could be made by experiencing this on the vulnerable level. To be a connective speaker, to be a motivational speaker, to actually go from the information age to total transformation, which is the total point of being a motivational speaker, you have to allow yourself to feel. You have to allow yourself to experience that, because a lot of people will come into your classroom feeling broken. A lot of people will come into your classroom feeling vulnerable. A lot of people will come to your classroom, no joke, as their last resort. And if you don't have the ability to be vulnerable and get down and be in the muck with them, then there's no way you can pull them out of it. So when you're sharing your mess, as it's become your message, allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to pause, allow yourself to use and leverage the language of silence so that people can connect with you and your unique message. And you've heard this 1,000 times over, especially if you've done any more research on YouTube on how to become a motivational speaker. You've heard this before. You know that you need to be vulnerable. You know you need to be authentic. You know your mess needs to become your message. So I'm going to give you my final bonus tip. With all that knowledge, it's useless without doing. So if you want a huge challenge, if you want to really take that step into that space, I'm going to challenge you to do this. Get out and practice. Practice delivering your story. Practice delivering your presentation. Even go so far as to record yourself and watch it again, which I know it can be one of the toughest things to do. It's one of the scariest places, right? The public stage is the #1 fear in America right now. But if you can nail that with that practice and start sharing your story, that's the #1 key to getting out there. So those are my secrets to start in your motivational speaking career. Hey, thanks for watching today. Hey, let me know if you liked this video. I'd love to make more about public speaking for you. It's kind of my jam, all right? So hit the subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow.